Hi my friends, my name is Francis. I use they them pronouns and I'm glad you found my channel. I'm currently debating whether or not I want to go to a Pride festival because it's a while away and I don't want to drive and I don't have anyone to go with. So and I decided that I was just going to sit down and write this. I didn't write anything, I'm just talking. Yeah, that's another thing. I am just talking. I don't have a script or anything, so I don't know how this is going to go, and this is not going to be for everyone. So, if you know you aren't the audience, maybe click off, because, I don't know, I'm going to be spitballing some possibly weird ideas about gender and sexuality and stuff. So I was listening to the podcast the other day, and it was talking about just sort of this idea of how under capitalism we are always consuming, right? We see trees and we think, how can I consume that tree? We consume our peers, we consume media, we consume animals, we consume all this stuff, right? Like everything is just about our personal consumption under this form of capitalism that we live right now. So he was talking about this idea of consumption under capitalism, and for some reason it was the first time that I noticed that that was a thing, and it was also around the time. This video is not canon, okay? Don't take this as any canon Frankie lore. I'm figuring stuff out. Because here's the thing, is gender and sexuality are very, very confusing. And then when you throw in romantic attraction, aesthetic attraction, emotional attraction versus just sexual attraction and all that stuff, it gets really muddied. If you hear scratching, it's my cat. She likes to play with her food. Kitty cat reveal. Her name's Crovis. She's the best thing ever. She hates me for that. Okay, going off of me saying gender and sexuality and romantic attraction are very, very confusing. I say that because I can have a pretty solid understanding of myself and then realize that I didn't understand necessarily a key concept. And so now I have this new information and now I'm going, maybe I'm not necessarily how I was identifying before. Maybe I'm not this. Maybe I was misinterpreting this key part of my life, which this key part of my life was clearly queerness, but it's just I haven't figured out how to read it yet. It's like going back and uncoding my life under a heteronormative umbrella and trying to figure out what it actually all meant. So I've been thinking about the concept of aromantic and asexual because I don't want to get too deep into it, but I'm starting to think maybe I was misunderstanding my sexual attraction. And even more so, I think that I was misunderstanding my romantic attraction, or what I considered to be sexual attraction and romantic attraction. I'm not going to get into the sexual stuff too much right now, just because I feel like it's a lot of personal details, and it's a lot of, I don't even really know what yet, and also I feel like the internet doesn't need to know about all that, but I'm toying with this idea of celibacy, and I'm toying with this idea of aromanticism and asexuality, and the celibacy isn't any, moral judgment or anything. It's just what I think is best for myself, and I guess in that is this concept of being, I always identified, I kept identifying myself as a lesbian, and now I'm looking at being aromantic and asexual, and it's like, well, how does that happen? And then you get into how complex gender and sexuality are and how heteronormative society is, and also, I don't know the word, the opposite of agender, I'm just throwing words out now, the opposite of ace, whatever that is, like allo, I heard the word the other day and I can't remember it now, but in this world where everything is very much focused on sex and romance and all of these other little, how those all interact in the grander society with your gender and your gender roles and your religion and your family structure and your political, there's just a lot, like, uncoding and going back and going, okay, well, if I take this layer off and I take this layer off and what is at this core here? And I'm realizing that it's really hard to do that. And I'm not entirely understanding what I'm looking at. I need to look into Judith Butler more. They talk about some concept of gender being a performance, but not like we're lying, performing, acting, but sort of everything is a performance if you think about it. If we go to the store and we're like, oh my gosh, hi, how are you? Like, that is, we're performing our service voice. Hi, thank you for calling Buffalo Wild Wings. This is Frankie. How may I help you? Like, we're performing everything all the time. When we wear our hair low, we're performing. When we cut our everything is a performance. And also, everything is gender affirming unless it's not gender related at all. And I feel like it gets so messy because we have this very tight idea of man and woman, straight man, straight woman, and it's just not that, and it's even, gosh, I could go on and on. I've been looking a lot into, I haven't actually been looking that much into gender, is the funny thing. It's just sort of been me looking into other things in the world and then trying to figure out how that places me in the grander picture of everything. Because it is honestly very hard when you're queer and everyone tells you, like, and raises you up to live your life one way, but that way it's not you. And now instead of just going a different path, you have to course correct, and like as you're course correcting, like people are just pushing against you, and it's like, well, who am I and what is happening? And like then it gets back into this idea of being consumed. Consumable gender. That's what I named this video, right? Is consumable gender. And I what I mean by that is people look at you and they make an assumption about you, right? And if you don't fit what they assume, then you aren't prepackaged and they don't really know what to make of you. They're like, oh, that's weird. That's that doesn't fit. That doesn't fit my two boxes. And I think it's hard in any situation under that system to figure out who you truly are, because let's say, you're born with a penis, you grow up, you're a straight cis man, right? Like, you're just a straight cis man. But the thing is, you like Taylor Swift and skirts are kind of cute, but like you could never express that or like explore that, because the second you do, people are gonna say so many things about you, and now you can't and now you're feeling like almost spiteful about that, and you're like, no, girl stuff, ew. And it's like, from a young age even, we get this where like, oh, you don't want that, that's for girls, you don't want that, that's for boys. And it's just like this gender rift starts so young, and it's so, like, I remember being little and being like, are cats boys or girls? And that's a silly example, but you think of everything, you see those memes on the internet where people are like, bros, is it gay to like the sunset? And that is so sad to me. And people will sit there, and I'm going off. I'm just rabid, blah, 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 blah. People will get so upset, and they'll be like, oh, you're trying to make everyone trans. You're trying to force transgenderism down people's throat. I don't care who's trans. I don't care. Like, I really don't. I just want people to be able to, like, understand themselves and express themselves in a way that is the most true to them. Because, like, honestly speaking, people should be able to express their gender however they want. And I'm not just talking about gay people. I'm not just talking about trans people, non-binary people, or anything. Like, women should be able to present themselves how they want to. Men should be able to present themselves how they want to. They should be able to like the things they like. It's so crazy to me. When I was little, I thought for sure by the time I got here that somehow miraculously we would have solved all these issues, because it just makes me so upset. Like, even as a kid, people would be like, oh, you can't play with Wolverine action figures, you're a girl. And I'd be like, my guy, I like Wolverine. I don't know why, even if I was a little girl, I liked Wolverine. You know what I mean? Like, I don't. And so when it comes to being an adult and presenting your gender and honestly expressing your own personality in any regard, people are just so afraid. And it's not just gender that they're being squished. Light. Okay, I thought there was something horrible in my cat's litter box, but it was just a lighting trick. Cats, man. I forget what I was saying. Gender affirmation can be many things. If a cis woman gets like facial surgery to make herself look more feminine, she even gets like a haircut, if she gets her nails done, that is gender affirming. That is gender affirmation. If a man, sculpts himself a fancy little beard and has goes out and gets himself all muscled up so that he's built and attractive, and he goes out and he, buys camo cargo shorts, that's in its own right, in its own way, gender affirmation. And I guess more my thing is sort of just saying, like, it sucks that affirming yourself in your own expression of your gender is like taboo, no matter who you are. And I don't like that, because I think everyone should be able to just express themselves and identify themselves how they do. I don't think that, I don't think Harry Styles should be yelled at for wearing a skirt. Like, why do we care? If we go back in history, men are wearing skirts and women are wearing trousers. You know what I mean? Men are wearing wigs and yada, yada, yada. Gender changes over time. The way we express our gender changes over time, over culture, over everything. The way that we experience our gender as a child is different than as a teen, and different as an adult, and different as an old person. It's like, I don't know, gender is just such a complex concept that just expands in so many directions. And I feel like the second you start trying to explore those areas of yourself, you're just met with a lot of backlash. And for me, it's like this weird situation where okay, so when I identified as a cis woman, I was told that I was too tall, my voice was too deep, and I had too much leg hair. I like too many boy things, right? So, too tall, voice too deep, body hair, boy things, right? And then as I started identifying as non-binary, suddenly I was too short, and my voice was too high, and I was too feminine. And what was the other thing? What was this one? Oh, I didn't grow enough body hair. Oh, so my hair was too long. And so it's like I really couldn't win. Like, no matter how I decided to live, I would never be enough for these people's standards. And I'm just like, why am I trying to be consumed by these people who will never be happy with who I am? There's nothing I can do to make certain relatives of mine see me how I could ever want them to see me, There's no, even if I wanted to express myself as a woman and live as a woman, the way that I would live that situation would still not be enough for them. If I decided to live as a man, it wouldn't be enough for them. And I say certain relatives, it's so many people. It's like old church friends, it's just so many people, right, that have these strong, hard opinions that you just can't break through. And I don't want to make gender decisions on a way that will make me the most easily consumable. You know, people act like I'd be, and I feel like everything that I've been saying has been such silly examples, maybe not silly, but like surface level, like, oh, my hair's too long to be non-binary. People also will be like, very specific things that people gender, and then they're like, why, what, you can't do that. Like, someone called me a bitch, and I didn't react like they misgendered me because they were saying I was mean instead of whiny. And I was like, okay, I don't care. And I don't know. It's weird. Is it weird? It's weird. It's weird, right? It's weird. It's weird. Basically, when I started considering this idea of asexuality, aromanticism as myself, and then taking that a step further and going, well, maybe celibacy is sort of the best route for me. Again, don't take this as any canon Francis lore, because it's all unfounded. It's all moving still, but this is sort of where I'm at with the whole thing. And I started to realize as I was beginning to live in this mindset of, oh, I don't have to worry about trying to date people or sleeping with them or even kissing them or being attracted to them and all this other stuff. It was really freeing, honestly, which I guess I kind of expected, because back before I ever did the do for the first time, I feel like that was a lot simpler for me. It wasn't so, like, consuming of a thought, you know? Like, this idea of if I'm attractive, if I'm desirable, and it has a lot to do with trauma that I experienced with the first person I was with in that way. If you're watching this and that's you, you know who you are. But then as I started to sort of step away from this concept of myself as a sexual and romantic being, first off, I started to realize that it's like it was like this cloud over my head, right? Like, it sort of dictated a lot of what I did. And it wasn't until I was watching this podcast where they were talking about this, like, consumption and how we consume everything, that I was making myself consumable in a lot of ways. This is a much grander thing. It goes a lot beyond just gender, sexuality, and romantic attraction. It's like I make myself consumable by being super agreeable and not being assertive, but also, like, I don't know, okay, armpit hair reveal. When I started growing out my body hair, it was because I was experiencing a lot of gender dysphoria and body dysphoria, and it just made me feel sick to my stomach to shave. And people never understood that. They always were just like, oh, it's gross, and they would take that a step further where they wanted me to shave my own body, so they would tell me that if I didn't shave, no one would be attracted to me, right? Like, oh, well, you'll never find a man if you're attracted, if you don't shave, you'll never find a man, you know, blah, 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 blah. And even then reiterated with that first schmexual partner I had, you know, he was very much in this, like, oh, well, you're gross because you have leg hair, and you're gross because of this thing about your gender expression, and this thing about, and he just, like, you know, just this, like, oh, well, you're not doing what me and other people find to be sexually appealing, therefore you're worthless. You're not consumable to me, so what are you? What's your point if you're not consumable to me? And it was something that I always sort of felt inside my heart, like this was this feeling that people were consuming me and not taking me in. And it caused me a lot of relationship problems because I just developed such an unhealthy relationship with sex and my body after that first person. Which, again, I don't want to get into all of the everything. There's a lot to it. I don't want to put a bunch of disclaimers into it, okay? I'm asexual, I'm aromantic potentially. I'm toying with this idea of asexual aromanticism, and also I'm traumatized, but they aren't, like, they connect, but they aren't caused by each other. People have a lot to say. I'm getting off track. See, when I try to justify every little thing that I say, then I get off track, but if I don't justify every little thing I say, then I'm not being consumed properly, and it goes back to this idea, right, of just, like, yeah, so I'm gonna just cut to right here, because I got way off topic, and I don't know where right here. Consumable gender. Here's the real thing that I realized is when I was going to express my own gender identity, I was thinking, and still am thinking, I just am aware of it now, of myself as like this consumable object, right? Where it's like, well, I'm easier to consume as a non-binary person with a vagina if I have short hair, because long hair means girl, right? And so it's like if I wanted to be an easily consumable gender, I would cut my hair and I would not wear makeup or something. I don't know. It's like, I just noticed that I was making myself this object. I was objectifying myself. And maybe I'm just like discovering feminist theory all on my own, and this has all been discovered already, but I've just been really thinking about the fact that a lot of my insecurities are things that other people don't like how they consume it about me. And it's like, I'm not here to be consumed by you. I'm here to live a life. I'm not an object, you know? There's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said, and I feel like I'm losing it. So I'll leave it there, I guess. If I feel like saying more, I'll post this at the end of the day or something. I don't know.